All right, so good evening, class. And we're going to start off with our lecture, and it's going to be the digestive system. Okay, so I'm going to do digestive lecture, then proceed on to the urinary system lecture, and then from there, I'm going to do the lab after the break, and then that's going to be digestive and or urinary lab. Okay, and that's going to be our schedule for today. All right, so let me actually open up your PowerPoint. So I'm going to open up the digestive system PowerPoint. Okay, so let me actually see. I have 3 of them open right now. Let me actually close out some of them. Okay, let me actually close it again and open up a new window. Okay, so something's not letting me do it. Okay, so all right, so I'm gonna open it again so that I'm sure that's what you have on your screen. Okay. All right, so what you have on your screen right now is going to be the digestive system. Okay, I'm going to go through the start first. Okay, all right, so digestive system is going to be our topic today, and the topic is all about structures that we use for the digestive process. Okay, so I should be able to write on it also. All right, okay, so the way to study the digestive system is to actually take a look at where food passes from out to in, and then from in to out. So those are the structures that we're going to be looking at. So your food passes first to the O. O is going to be your oral cavity. So the oral cavity, you're going to have some accessory organs there that are part of the digestive system. That's going to be your teeth, tongue, and then your salivary glands. It's going to be located at your oral cavity. We're going to take a look at all of those too when we go to the oral cavity. And then after the food goes to the oral cavity, it's going to actually be pushed to the back of the oral cavity. And the back wall of the oral cavity is going to be your pharynx. So your pharynx is going to be the next one that the food will pass through. Okay. So after the food goes to the pharynx, it now goes to the E, and that's going to be your esophagus. And then the esophagus will go down to the thoracic cavity, penetrate the diaphragm, and made up with the next structure below the diaphragm. That's going to be your S, which is going to be the stomach. Then after the stomach, the food now goes into the small intestinal tract. And the small intestinal tract is divided into 3 parts. In order, their names are duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. So it's DJI. So that would help you out not forget who's actually first, okay? So duodenum is actually the first small intestinal tract, followed by jejunum and ileum. Jejunum and ileum are the place where we absorb the nutrients from all the digestive products. And after it being absorbed, whatever's left is just going to be waste, which we call feces. And that connects into the next structure called the large intestinal tract. So the large intestinal tract now is going to be divided into different parts: the cecum, the ascending colon, the transverse colon, the descending colon, the sigmoid, and the rectum. So take a look at the mnemonics. It's cat desire. Okay, so that's going to be in order. The cecum is a blind sac when the ileum enters, and then it continues on to the ascending colon. Okay, so the word means ascending, so it's going up on the right side. It's going to be on the right side of your abdominal cavity, and then it's going to go horizontal. We call it transverse colon. And then from there, it's going to go down to the left side. That's your descending colon. And then it's going to actually create a little S-shaped tube called the sigmoid. And then from there, it connects to the sac or pouch called the rectum. So the rectum is a pouch in which it senses fullness. So when there's fullness on your feces, it's going to stretch onto the wall of the rectum, and that will actually produce what we call pain. And then from there, it then allows the opening of the sphincters from your anus. So the anus is the opening of your digestive tract. So now food is being discharged out at the anus. So those are the structures that we're going to be looking at, each one of them. So this is what they look like on this sample diagram. So here is going to be the mouth, which is going to be the oral cavity. Okay? And within the mouth oral cavity, you've got the tongue, the 3 salivary glands. Okay? And then from there, it's going to be pushed to the back wall, and that back wall is going to be called your pharynx. And then after the pharynx, it continues down here to become your esophagus. Okay, goes down to the thoracic cavity and penetrates the diaphragm muscle to then connect to what we call the stomach. So the stomach is the next structure, and then from there, it now goes into the small intestinal tract. So the small letter C-shaped structure is what we call the duodenum. It's hidden by the colon. The C-shaped structure is the duodenum, and then from there it connects to the jejunum and ileum. So I wouldn't be able to know who's jejunum and ileum on the structures here, but the way to identify it is whatever it follows after duodenum, it's going to be your jejunum. And when it connects to this pouch called the cecum, okay, that is going to be the ileum. So the small intestinal tract that connects there is going to be the ileum to the cecum. And there's a valve there, and that valve is called the ileocecal valve. Okay? And now the structure now in the large intestinal tract are bigger. So now from here, it then goes up to the ascending colon, and then by peristalsis, okay, it will move to the ascending colon and then transverse colon. Then from the transverse colon, it goes down as your descending colon. Okay, ascending, transverse, and descending. And then after that, it becomes this small S-shaped structure. That's going to be your sigmoid, and the last one is going to be the rectum. Okay, and remember, the rectum is going to be a pouch. So remember, that pouch has sensory receptors that whenever you stretch them, it actually produces pain. And that's the reason why you got to run to the toilet. Okay. Some of the structures located above that, they have no sensory receptors for stretch. So they can sense fullness, but they're not going to sense actually stretch and then produce pain. That's why if the person does not have a rectum, you're going to attach what we call a colostomy bag. So colostomy bag is attached because the person won't be able to see, won't be able to see, feel fullness of the pouch. And if the person does not have that pouch for the rectum, then we got to use a colostomy bag. Okay, so these are the structures in which your all your food will pass through. Okay, so the digestive process, short brief physiology of the digestive process. Your mouth is actually for ingestion, and then the means of propulsion in your intestinal in your digestive tract is going to be my means of peristalsis. Now, there's actually places there that can actually produce what we call mechanical digestion. Okay, and the purpose of the mechanical digestion is to prepare food for chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion will actually make this food smaller. Okay, but remember, that's not still a product that can be absorbed easily by your intestinal tract, and it has to be digested further by enzymes in order to get the small products that can actually pass through the epithelium of your jejunum and ileum. So chewing through the mouth, churning of food in the stomach, and segmentation is the rhythmic local constriction of the intestines. So it actually is the one that actually will make the food into smaller pieces. And then the chemical digestion can also happen in different places, not just your duodenum. It can happen in the mouth. Okay, so mouth has salivary amylase, which is going to be an enzyme to break down sugars. The stomach has also your pepsin to break down your proteins, and your acid will actually break down some of the components of your food. And then the small intestine will then give off what we call digestive enzymes coming out of the pancreas, and that will further break it down in small pieces. So we need the carbohydrates to actually be broken down in small pieces of glucose. We need the triglycerides, which are fats, to be broken down in small pieces of fatty acids. And we need the proteins to be broken down in small components called amino acids. And those are the ones that are absorbed by your intestinal tract. So the absorption is going to be transport digested nutrients to the blood. Okay, so defecation is a process of elimination of substances that are not digestible. We call it feces. So those are the different processes that happen in your digestive tract. Okay, now inside your abdominal cavity, which most of your digestive tract is located at, we have what we call the different structures called peritoneum that holds or surrounds the digestive organs. So the first one, this is serous membrane, okay, that wraps around the organ, okay, and we call that your visceral peritoneum. And then after that, it goes to the abdominal wall and wraps around the abdominal wall, and we call that parietal peritoneum. So in between the visceral and the parietal peritoneum is a cavity, and that cavity here is called the peritoneal cavity. Okay, and this is going to be the structure that holds or suspends the visceral organ to the dorsal wall. It's because it's a redundant structure that wraps around the intestines and connects to the parietal peritoneum, and that structure is called dorsal mesentery. Okay, so nothing is connected to the ventral wall. Okay, there's nothing connected to the ventral wall except the area where the liver is. Okay, so the liver is connected to the ventral wall. We call it the ventral mesentery, but specifically we call it the falciform ligament. Okay, so those are the different structures we have to look at inside the peritoneal cavity. And the main thing about this is about the mesentery, which is a double layer peritoneum, okay, that holds organ in place, but also it sites for the storage of fats. So you got a lot of fat storage in that area. And also it allows the circulatory vessels and nerves to pass through those mesenteries. Okay. Now this is going to be what it looks like on a transverse section. Now this is going to be the liver. Okay. The liver is covered by visceral peritoneum. Okay, we'll change that color. So this is going to be the visceral peritoneum of the liver, and this is going to be the parietal peritoneum of the liver. And the visceral will create what we call the falciform ligament that connects to the parietal peritoneum of the abdominal wall. Okay, so that's only place we have an organ attached to the ventral wall, and that's going to be the falciform ligament attaching the liver to the ventral wall. Most of them are going to be attached at the dorsal wall, like this one. Okay, so this is going to be the parietal peritoneum. And if you notice that the parietal peritoneum, okay, at the dorsal wall has structures that are not located inside the peritoneal cavity. These structures, such as the kidney and aorta and the inferior vena cava, all of them are what we call retroperitoneal organs. So they are actually located not inside the peritoneal cavity, but they're actually located behind the peritoneum. Okay. Now, The other things that we want to look at are the different mesenteries that connects different portions of your intestinal organ. So this one is what we call a mesentery, and specifically the one that called lesser omentum is a mesentery that connects the lesser curvature of the stomach. Okay? And remember, this is greater curvature of the stomach. So lesser curvature of the stomach connected to the liver, we're going to be calling that the lesser omentum. Okay, and that's a mesentery. And then from there, we're going to be looking at another kind of omentum, which is coming out from the greater greater curvature of the stomach. So the greater omentum, okay, that's going to be the structure in which the stomach connects with the greater curvature, and it goes to the transverse colon. So it looks like an apron called the greater omentum. Okay, so it's better to see it on a mid-sagittal view, the greater omentum. Okay, so let's start with the greater omentum first. So remember, this is the place called the greater curvature of the stomach. This is the lesser curvature of the stomach. So the greater curvature of the stomach has this omentum, okay? And it's called the mesentery. And then turns around, redundancy, and then connects to the transverse colon, okay? So that structure is called the greater omentum. So it starts with the greater curvature, turns around as a loop, and connects to the transverse colon. Now, this is going to be the lesser curvature. The lesser curvature connects with the liver, and that's going to be our lesser omentum. Remember, these are mesenteries. And then this one here that connects the transverse colon to the dorsal wall, that's going to be your transverse mesocolon. This is not part of the greater omentum, okay? So the greater omentum only stops at that transverse colon. Now, another one here is going to be the mesentery that connects all this small intestinal tract, the jejunum and ileum. Okay, so the jejunum and ileum, except for the duodenum, the jejunum and ileum is actually connected to the dorsal wall, and that is your mesentery, or sometimes we call that the mesentery proper. Okay, and those are the different mesenteries. And the last thing, the ventral mesentery, which connects the liver to the ventral wall, that's a ventral mesentery, and we call it the falciform ligament. All right, so we finished with the mesenteries. Now we're going on to the alimentary canal. So what are the different layers of your digestive tube? Okay, we're going to start with the first layer inside, which is close to the lumen. This is simple columnar epithelium, okay, that has microvilli. Okay? That is going to be called the epithelium. Remember, epithelium is always attached to a lamina propria, okay, which is some kind of a cement that allows the epithelium to stay on. Okay, and then there's another layer here. So this is going to be the lamina propria here. And then there's another layer here. Is made out of muscle, and that's going to be called your muscular mucosa. Okay? So the muscular mucosa and the lamina propria and the epithelium, that layer is called the mucosa. So from here to here, that's called the mucosa. Then after that, you got the submucosa. Okay, next layer. And then we have the two layers of smooth muscles, the muscular externa, and the circular is the more deep one, and the longitudinal and more superficial muscle. Okay? And the musculus externa, and that is going to be part of what you call the area here. And it's going to be part of the submucosa. Right? And then the outer portion of that is what we call the serosa. Epithelium with connective tissue. So that's called the outer layer. That is going to be called the serosa. Okay. So the second layer is made out of the submucosa and the muscular externa. All right, so those are the different things that are in your digestive tract. So now let's take a look at the anatomy of the mouth. So we have the roof called the palate. We have the hard palate and the soft palate. And the soft palate at the tip is called the uvula. It's called the uvula. Okay. And then we take a look at the oral cavity at the side. You can see this tonsils, and those are called your palatine tonsils. Remember, we identified that when we did the respiratory tract. Then we got teeth. Okay, in front of the teeth, what we call the vestibule. And we have the different tongue muscles that connects into the tongue. And then we have the hyoid bone that carries on to the respiratory tract, starting out from the trachea. Starting out from the thyroid cartilage. It's what we call finger respiratory. And then here's going to be your your cricoid. And this one's going to be the tracheal rings. Right, so those are the different structures. And then inner side, the epiglottis, the one that protects food for preventing it to go into the respiratory tract. That's going to be your epiglottis. Okay. Right, so let's move on. This is the mouth, okay? So this is going to be the uvula, and beside that is going to be the soft palate, and then after that, you're going to have the hard palate, all of this. Remember, it's made out of two bones, the maxillary and the palatine bone. Okay, and to the side, you're going to have what we call the palatine tonsils. Okay, and then you have the tongue. And these are ducts of your submandibular glands. Those are the ducts in which saliva exits through those ducts. And then we have the different teeth, and we're going to go through that later on. All right, and then you have your tongue first, okay? And the tongue has three kinds of papillae: filiform, fungiform, circumvallate. The filiform is the one that has no taste buds, okay? They're the structures that are actually located in the middle of the tongue, middle and side of the tongue, and that allows it to be a little bit rough in order to grab the food, okay? So that's actually the main purpose of your filiform papillae. The fungiform is located in the anterior, mid portion, posterior portion of your tongue up to here. And the circumvallate is the one that goes around the back of the tongue. And both circumvallate and fungiform has taste buds. Filiform does not have your taste buds, okay? So the main thing about the filiform is actually that it's the one on animals like cats. It's a little bit elevated, so they look like hairbrush. So when they groom themselves, when they lick themselves, they're actually grooming themselves. And then after that, they spit out this fur ball, okay? Then the posterior portion of the tongue, all of this is going to be your lingual tonsils. Okay, that's going to be your lingual tonsils, and to the side of this is going to be your palatine tonsils. Okay, now let's go on to the different parts of the teeth. So for the deciduous, or the what we call the baby teeth, there's only 20 of them, and they appear at about 6 months of age. So there's going to be 20. So the formula of the teeth is going to be 2, 1, 2, and 2, 1, 2 means 5 times 4, because we're just measuring 1/4 of the upper teeth. So there's actually 4 of them. So 2, 1, 2, 5 times 4, you can have what we call your 20 of the deciduous or the milk teeth. Okay, so now for the adults, it's going to be 2, 1, 2, 3, and then, sorry, 2, 1, 2, and then 3. That is making out 8. And then multiply by 4. The permanent teeth is going to be 32. Okay, so the names of that is going to be the incisors on the front, 2 on each, 2 on 1/4 of it. Okay, and then we got 1 canine, 2 premolars, and those 2 premolars are sometimes called the bicuspids. And then we have the molars. Okay, and the last molar that will erupt is going to be called this wisdom tooth. So take a look at the age where they erupt, 17 to 25 years old. Okay, and those are the different teeth process to macerate the food into smaller pieces. Okay, and then the next one is going to be the salivary gland. There's 3 of them, one in front of to your ear, and that's called your carotid gland. The other one is going to be here below the mandible. That's your submandibular gland. Okay, and then another one called sublingual. So it means it's just below the tongue, and that's going to be the sublingual gland. Okay, and remember, they actually start secreting your salivary amylase, which is start of digestion, targeting on the sugar. Okay, so 3 glands. Okay, now one thing about this is going to be the parotid gland. Okay, they're the one that causes what we call mumps. It's a viral infection for kids. Okay, what it does is just inflame the salivary gland, and that's about it. Okay, but there's a complication. 10% of the people who have mumps, okay, at that child's age, sometimes they actually produce what we call orchitis, or what we call infection of the testes. Remember, the testes is where the sperm are located at. So when there's an infection of the testes, we call it orchitis. Okay, 10% of those 10% will become infertile. Okay, and that's the reason why we vaccinate kids for the mumps. And we used MMR vaccine combination: measles, mumps, rubella. Okay. All right. So next, go on to the pharynx. So the pharynx is just the back of the oral cavity, and we have actually noted 2 pharynx that we can actually associate with the digestive tract, and that's going to be the oral pharynx. And another one is going to be your laryngeal pharynx. Okay, so it's stratified squamous epithelium. And then muscles that are located here at the area of the esophagus is going to be the superior, middle, inferior pharyngeal constrictors. Okay, here are the oral pharynx, laryngeal pharynx. Okay, now we're moving on from the pharynx to the esophagus, and then after the esophagus, it now opens up to the stomach. And remember, the area where the stomach and your esophagus opens up is going to be a valve, and they call it cardiac valve. Then the name for that is going to be the gastroesophageal valve. Okay, so that's the valve that actually prevents the acid from the inside of the stomach to regurgitate upward. Okay, because some people have that problem, in which we call it gastric esophageal reflux disease. The acid regurgitates to the esophagus, and remember, esophagus is not built to get acid. Okay, so they can actually produce esophagitis or even cancer of the esophagus. So we want to prevent the reflux into the esophagus, prevent the lining of the esophagus produce those abnormalities. Okay, and then the structure that you see here, which looks like a dome-shaped structure, that is called the fundus. Okay, and then we have the body of the stomach over here, and then after that we have the pyloric antrum. And then we have the pyloric canal. And then the valves are located here at the walls. And that valve is called your pyloric valve. Okay, so we now notice that there's a valve above and a valve below. Because remember, the acid in your stomach actually produces a very acidic environment. It's not it's not going to be favorable for the walls, for the esophagus, and the duodenum. Okay, so that's the reason why we have two valves there to prevent them from exposing the esophagus, duodenum from the acidity. Okay, now let's take a look at the different curves. Okay, this is lesser curvature. And remember, the lesser omentum attaches there to the liver. And this is going to be the greater curvature here. So the greater curvature will attach the mesentery to the transverse column. Okay, and that's going to be the greater omentum. Then we have the three muscles that you see here. Okay, so the muscles that you see on top is going to be longitudinal. So it follows the path of your uh, structures of your stomach. Okay, and remember, it's the same thing as what you have on your digestive tube. The longitudinal are more superficial, and circular are deeper. Okay, so the next structure is going to be called the circular muscle or smooth muscle. And then the inner side of the stomach has an extra one, and they call it the oblique layer. Because remember, the stomach's purpose is to churn. Churn means to turn those food around and try to actually pulverize the food together with the acid and hit it to the wall and to the floor. And if you notice, the wall and the floor of the stomach is rough, and that roughness is called your rugae. Okay, so it's rugae. It's just like a washing board from the older times when you wash your clothes. You actually hit it to the wall. It's rough, and then it will actually serve as cleansing. Here, it serves as pulverizing the food. Okay, and then you're gonna go down after the pylorus. Okay, so we actually are looking at the esophagus. So we actually went back, and remember the sphincters that separate your esophagus and the stomach is called the cardiac sphincter. Okay, and remember, the esophagus is stratified squamous epithelium, and you have mucous glands located in the esophagus. It produces what we call your mucus. And then it has skeletal muscle in the first third of the length in the esophagus. Okay, so the first third of the length of the esophagus is skeletal muscle, so it's under your control. But after that, it's going to be smooth muscle, and that's going to be peristalsis. And the most external layer is going to be your adventitia. Okay. All right, so now we're looking now at the inside of the stomach. The muscularis has three layers: circled, longitudinal, and oblique of the layers of the muscle. Okay, epithelium simple, columnar epithelium, and the mucosa is dotted with gastric hits. It has gastric glands. Okay, so this is the rugae, or the surface of the stomach. The surface of the stomach here, magnified. And then they notice that the rugaes actually have these holes, and that hole is called the gastric pits. Now, if you go down to the gastric pit, then you can actually see also the different cells that produce secretions. So what are the cells there that actually produce its own secretion? When you say mucous neck cells, so those are called the mucous neck cells. Okay, they're actually excreting what we call mucus. Okay, then the other one is going to be your parietal cell, and that's the one that secretes your hydrochloric acid, HCl. Okay, so this is an example of a parietal cell. And so this one. Okay, and the last of those cells, or the chief cells, their secretion is called pepsinogen. Okay, it's an enzyme. Carcinogen is secreted by the chief cell, and the parietal cell secretes hydrochloric acid, and then once hydrochloric acid act as enzyme or what we call substrate for carcinogen, it turns to pepsine. Okay, the pepsine is an active form of your enzyme that will digest your proteins. Okay, so you got those three cells. Now, looking at the small intestines, it is divided into three parts: duodenum, jejunum, and then your ileum, DJI. Okay, so this is going to be the duodenum. Okay, it looks like a letter C shaped structure. And after that, it terminates and becomes what we call the jejunum. Okay, so it's a small portion of the small intestinal tract. Now, what does that duodenum has? Okay, it has the connection of two of your organs. One is going to be the gallbladder, and the other one is going to be the pancreas. And they're connected through the ducts. So the connection of the gallbladder into the duodenum, okay, we call it bile duct. But remember, this part here of the gallbladder is called cystic duct. So generally, we have the bile sitting in storage at the gallbladder, but remember, the bile is actually produced by the liver. So liver produces the bile, so it will travel through what we call the right and left hepatic ducts. It becomes right and left hepatic duct, they become one, and that's going to be called your common hepatic duct. And then from there, most of your bile is stored at the gallbladder. So the connection is going to be called the cystic duct into the gallbladder. So once the duodenum senses fats, so it actually detects fats in the food. Okay, at this point, the food here is called chyme. So the area here, when you have food there, we call it chyme. Okay, so now the gallbladder connects into the duodenum together with the pancreatic duct, and that's going to be the main pancreatic duct plus the bile duct. And the combination two is going to be your duodenal papillae. Okay, so the duodenal papillae has a connection on the bile duct and the main pancreatic duct. But there's a accessory pancreatic duct here, and that's the one that actually secretes another set of those pancreatic secretions. Okay. All right, so we've finished with your duodenum. Okay, now we're going to go to the small intestine now, your jejunum ileum. And if you notice, jejunum ileum, also with the duodenum, it has this what we call circular folds. So they're circular folds, and each one is a circular fold. So this is a circular fold. Okay, and if you magnify this, this is what you see in a magnified view. So circular folds are what we call plicae circularis. Okay, and then after that, you got this finger-like projection of the mucosa. These are your villi. That's your villi. Okay. So you have a villi, and then now the microvilli is going to be located here on top of the stratified, the circulocolumnar actually. Okay, so they will have that microvilli located there. All right, so moving on. I'm finished with my small intestine, and I'm going to the large intestine. So whatever you have in the large intestine is really feces. It's not going to be useful for the body. So it also has small amount of bacteria. That's the reason why vitamin K is produced in your intestinal tract. And they're the one that will literally absorb water and electrolytes. No more digestive products. Can only absorb water and electrolytes. And then there's going to be what we call a mass peristaltic movement, which forces feces towards the rectum. The purpose is squeeze it towards the rectum. Okay, and now we're looking at the large intestine now. And what do we see in the large intestine? So the large intestine has structures that are unique onto that area. So the first one is called the tinea coli. There's actually a thickening of the longitudinal muscularis. Thickening of the longitudinal muscularis. Okay, and that structure is what we call the tinea coli. Right here. And the other one is called the hostra. So because of the tinea coli, okay, it actually puckers the tube into smaller divisions, and that is going to be called your hostrum. And then last is going to be the epiploic appendages. These are fat-filled pouches you see here attached. Okay, there the tinea coli, and it's fat-filled pouches of visceral peritoneum. So it's actually visceral peritoneum with a lot of fat. Right, and then your colon now is divided into ascending, transverse, and descending. Okay, remember the edges have a name, so we just can call it right colic, and it's going to be left colic, or yes, it's going to be your hepatic flexure because the liver is located close to that area, and then it's going to call splenic flexure because spleen is located also close to that area. Okay, so we got the uh, flexures, the right colic or hepatic flexure, and the left colic or the splenic flexure. All right, and then if you take a look at the colon, we have the ascending transverse, descending sigmoid, and cecum is this area here, the pouch, in which the ileum connects to the cecum. But if you notice, there's something dangling at the bottom of the cecum, and that is going to be called your appendix, vermiform appendix, worm-like appendix. Okay, so your intestinal tract, large intestinal tract, you got a lot of lymphoid organs, tissues there. That's why it's already protected. Okay. All right. So rectum is going to be in a pouch in the inferior half of the sacrum, and then the anal canal is the last subdivision of the large intestine. Okay. So let's take a look now. The other structures here. Got tinea coli, hostra, blood appendages. Okay, and the last part is going to be the anus. That's the last where food passes through. Okay, and let me introduce you to this line. This is called your pectinate line. Remember, hemorrhoids are caused by dilation of these blood vessels here. That's why they bleed. And the hemorrhoids veins are located there. They're called hemorrhoidal veins, together with the one below the pectinate. Okay, so how do we actually differentiate external and internal hemorrhoids? Internal hemorrhoids does not have pain. This one is positive with pain, unstable. Okay, and now we're going to the largest intestine, and we're going to see the simple columnar epithelium. You see it on here, one layer. Okay, then on the bottom of that is going to be the lamina propria, where they line up the epithelium. And then you can see a lot of these goblet cells. They're the cells that are secrete mucus. And then we have your intestinal glands. Okay, that's going to be at the air of the intestines, and we call it intestinal crypts. Okay, right. So now we're going to concentrate now on the accessory organ. So your accessory organ of the digestive tract, you have the liver, and then also the gallbladder. We're going to do the liver first. So we're looking at, whenever you see the gallbladder, you're looking at the back of the liver. So that's how you actually use it as a landmark. You don't see the gallbladder at the front of the liver. It is always the back of the liver. So I'm looking at the posterior part of the gallbladder. So this part here that attaches itself to the ventral wall, that's going to be the falciform ligament. Okay. Now I have four lobes of the liver. This one is called left lobe, so the whole thing here is left lobe. This one is going to be the right lobe. So all here is going to be the right lobe. And then we have quadrate lobe. Looks like a square. That's why I call it quadrate lobe. And then the one on top here is going to be called the caudate lobe. These are the lobes of the liver. Okay. And then function, the liver has hepatocytes. They rough endoplasmic reticulum manufactures blood proteins, and smooth endoplasmic reticulum produces bile salts in your hepatocytes and detoxifies poisons. Okay, and then peroxidome, it detoxifies alcohol when it passes through the liver. Okay, so we got a lot of purpose for the liver, and a couple of them is going to be called storage of sugar. We call it glycogen inside glycosomes in the cells of hepatocytes. And also, liver has a great capacity for regeneration. All right, so we have the different lobes, and then let me actually tell you about the different branches of the ducts of the gallbladder, but I'm going to show it on the next page. Okay. Okay, so this is going to be the gallbladder. Okay. And then we have your ducts, and which, remember, bile is produced by the liver. So this is going to be your right. This is going to be your left hepatic duct. And then they become one to become your common hepatic duct. Okay, remember, patient's right and patient's left. Okay, then they become one, in which we call it the common hepatic duct. And then after that, it's actually going to store it first to the gallbladder. So it connects to the cystic duct and then stores to the gallbladder. Now, the duodenum, once it senses your fats inside the duodenum, it's going to secrete a hormone called cholecystokinin, and that will actually make this gallbladder squeeze. And that's because what is bile for? Bile is actually to emulsify fats. Because remember, water and fats don't mix. Now, if you actually put bile, you're going to be mixing. And mixing of that will allow it to actually be absorbed easily by your intestinal tract. You still need fats one way or another. Because remember, the axons of your neurons are made out of fats. Okay, but not too much. Okay, or else they're going to stay at your hypodermis. Right, and then you have the bile squeeze out from the gallbladder and then passes through the cystic duct. So this is how it connects into your duodenum. Cystic duct then connects to the bile duct and then joins the connection of the pancreatic duct. And that connection, the pancreatic duct, is called the main pancreatic duct. Okay, that's the main pancreatic duct. So the two connects each other into this area, and that is going to be called the hepatopancreatic ampulla, and there's going to be a sphincter there. Okay, and sometimes we just call it the duodenal pathway. All right, so next is going to be, there's another duct coming from the pancreas, and that's going to be your accessory pancreatic duct. It still connects into the duodenum. Okay. All right, so now let's take a look at the pancreas itself. So it has acinar cells. Inside there are cells in your tubes, and they're the one that makes and secrete your pancreatic enzyme. Okay, and the enzymes are then activated in what we call the duodenum. And once it activates, now it can actually properly chemically digest the food into small pieces, so it's going to be easily absorbed by the jejunum ileum. But aside from those pancreatic enzymes, it also produces what we call insulin and glucagon, two hormones that regulates your blood sugar. So inside there is going to be what we call the islets of Langerhans, and they're the ones that secrete your hormones. The beta one is the one that creates your insulin, and the alpha type is the one that creates your glucagon. Okay, so those are the two hormones that actually stabilizes your blood sugar. Okay, and that is the finish of our digestive tracts okay, lecture. Okay, so I'm gonna actually move on to the digestive system models, then put on a break, and then continue with urinary system, so that it's still fresh on your head about your digestive organs. Okay. So I'm gonna actually get on to my get the digestive models, okay, and then open up for you guys to use. I think I don't have it on this folder. Okay, just reminder that your uh, PowerPoint research is deadline tonight. Okay, 12 midnight. Okay, so we're gonna open up your digestive system models. Okay, so the structure. These are the models that we're gonna be using. Okay, so I'm gonna share it with you guys. So digestive system. Okay, so it's not moving into that one. All right, so okay, so they're just Sysimonos. Open up, share it again. All right, and this is your models. Okay, so I'm gonna actually open up my pen. Okay, so you should be able to see the word right. Okay, and let's start with the different models for the digestive organ. Okay, here you're gonna see only two glands here. That's gonna be the parotid and submandibular. Remember, the sublingual is actually deeper, so you got to take out the mandible. So the parotid is in front of your ear, and this is gonna be below the mandible, submandibular. Then the sublingual, that's the one underneath your tongue. Okay. Then you can still see the submandibular here. All right, and then these are the parts of the stomach, and the stomachs have the regions, and regions are called your cardiac region, area where the sphincter, okay, the area where the sphincter is located at, separating the esophagus from the stomach. Okay, and then we have the region, the fundus, this dome-shaped structure of the stomach. That is going to be your fundus region. And then the body region is the rest of the body, or parts of the stomach. And then the end of that stomach is going to be the pylorus region. So those are the four regions of the stomach. And this is going to be the lesser curvature, and this is going to be the greater curvature. Okay. And if you take a look at the inside of the stomach, you can see these ridges. These ridges are what we call rugae. Okay. And here you're going to see the pyloric sphincter, or what we call the valve. And at the duodenum, you can see the circular folds, and we call that the plica circularis. And the purpose of that is to increase your absorptive surface. Okay, another picture of the stomach. This is connected to the esophagus. It actually becomes smaller because of the cardiac valve, okay, through the cardiac region. And then this is the fundus, the body, and the antrum, the canal. Okay, this is the antrum, this is the canal, and then the pylorus with the sphincters. Okay, again, lesser curvature, greater curvature, and inside a raised ridge called the rugae. Right? Okay, so we're going to concentrate here more onto the muscles. Okay, so the more superficial muscles is going to be your longitudinal, and then the second layer of that muscle is going to be your circular, and then the last layer of that muscle is going to be the obliques. Okay, so those are the different muscles that wraps around the stomach. Okay, here again is going to be the muscles. Okay, so here it gives you the longitudinal, follows the length of the stomach. This is going to be the circular second layer, and this is going to be your obliques. Okay. All right, next, it also gives you the same picture of the stomach. Okay, it gives you the area where the fundus connects with, the esophagus connects with the stomach. Okay, and that's going to be the cardiac region. Okay, so this is the cardiac region here. So how do I know that? Because that's close to the fundus. Okay, then after that you have the pyloric region, and this is the lesser curvature, and this is the greater curvature. Okay, and then you can see the longitudinal muscles, or superficial. Then you have the circulars. Okay, get with this one. Then you have the obliques. Okay. So I just want to be sure that I'm doing it right. Okay. So 522 circular, and 523 is the obliques. Okay, then this is what we call villi. Okay, so these are what you see inside your small intestine. Remember the circular folds, that's called plica circularis, but on each of those folds, you have what we call the intestinal villi. Okay, so this is going to be the mucosa, and letter B is going to be the submucosa, and letter C is going to be the muscularis externa, which is made out of the two muscles called your circular and longitudinal. And then the last layer is going to be called the serosa. Okay. So what are the things that I want you to look at here? Okay. These are capillaries, number 6. These are blood vessels in which your nutrients are being absorbed into your intestinal tract. Okay. So they go back into the intestinal tract, and they're going to be connecting into the what we call the hepatic portal vein. Okay, and your lacteals, these are the lymphatic vessels, okay, that connects into the intestinal trunk of your lymphatic capillary, because of your what we call this of your cisterna chyla. And remember, this is the one that actually where the fats are being diverted and absorbed and then directed to the lymphatic vessels. It doesn't go to the blood vessel. Because remember, the lymphatic vessels anyway connects to the subclavian vein. Okay? So eventually it's going to connect into the lymphatic, what we call systemic circulation. Okay? And then what are crypts? These are crypts, the pits that you see here. These are your crypts or intestinal crypts. Okay? Same thing with all the labeling. Okay? So again, longitudinal muscles are more superficial compared to the circular muscles. They're more deeper. Okay, again, intestinal crypts. Okay, it shows the lacteals and the capillaries. Okay, capillaries are here. And then these are your villi. Okay, so this is going to be, again, a picture of the stomach connected to the esophagus. And we've got the cardia, fundus, the body, and then pylorus. Okay, this actually shows you a gastric ulcer here. Remember, when you see a gastric ulcer, if you actually are feeling some hyperacidity, you don't usually say, I got gastric ulcer, because the only way that you can actually say you got gastric ulcer, when somebody looks at an endoscope and they see you're bleeding, or so you got a symptom of fresh blood being vomited. Okay, so that's going to be generally what happens to gastric ulcers. Okay. All right, so now we're looking now at the pancreas. So the pancreas has the head, neck, body, and tail. Okay, but the head is actually divided into the head proper and the uncinate process. Okay, so the curves like a letter, reverse letter J. Okay, so that's the reason why you got the uncinate process, head proper. That's the one that curves like a letter J on reverse, and then the straight one is going to be the neck, body, and tail. So this is what the pancreas would look like. Okay, remember this connects into the duodenum through what we call the main pancreatic duct. And they have a fancy name for that. We call it Wilson, the Wilson canal. Now the other one is called the accessory pancreatic duct, and that name is called Santorini duct. Okay, so the Wilson and Santorini are just names of the ducts from the pancreas. All right, and then we looking at this again. Okay, we got the main pancreatic duct, the Wilson, and this is going to be the Santorini, the accessory pancreatic duct. Okay, and again the pancreas, main pancreatic duct, accessory pancreatic duct. I'm waiting for it to show up with the connection of the gallbladder. Now here is going to be the main pancreatic duct, and here is going to be the gallbladder duct, or what we call bile duct, that connects, that actually shows up together with the main pancreatic duct and enters into what we call the duodenal papillae. So it's the opening, it's called the duodenal papillae. And it's made out of the bile duct and the main pancreatic duct of the pancreas. This is what it looks like inside a cellular pancreas. This structure looks like an island. That is to be called your beta, the islet of Langerhans. So the islet of Langerhans, specifically the beta, secretes insulin, and the alpha secretes what you call your glucagon. And these are your assigner cells on tubes. So each of these are cells lining up a tube, and they're the one that secretes your enzyme. They're the one who connects into the main pancreatic duct. Okay, so this gives you an example of the between the stomach and the duodenum. Okay. Now this is going to be a picture of the small intestinal tract. So far we call it jejunum. Majority of that is going to be the jejunum, but the ileum is the one that's close here. That connects into the cecum. The cecum has this tail called the appendix. Okay, and you can see that the cecum will actually become thinned out because there's a valve there, and that valve is called the ileocecal valve. Okay, and then from there it becomes your ascending colon, and then this part here, we call it the hepatic flexure, and then it goes to the transverse colon. And then this part here is going to splenic flexure at the corner, and then it goes to the descending colon, and then you have the sigmoid and have the rectum. Okay, and the one that the thickening here on longitudinal muscle that is called your tinea coli. You only see it at your large intestinal tract. Okay, this focuses on to the ileum connecting to the cecum and opening through what we call the ileocecal valve right here. Okay, the appendix is the one that actually goes down below the cecum. Then here shows you the greater omentum. Remember, the greater omentum connects from the greater curvature, goes down and turns around as a loop to the transverse colon. So that's where it stops. Okay, so this is going to be your transverse colon, tinea coli, the thickening of the longitudinal muscle. Okay. Now here you should know where you're looking at. Are you looking at the back? Because if you're looking at the back, which is the back where the jejunum was, okay, so take a look at this picture. You're seeing the jejunum here. And remember, the jejunum is actually attached to the posterior wall through what we call the mesentery. So by looking at this picture, you should know if you're looking at the front or the back. I know I'm looking at the back because, number one, the appendix is at the right position, right side, okay? And that's the cecum. So I know that I'm looking at the back. And I don't see those small intestines wrapping around here. So I'm looking at the mesentery of the small intestines. So all of this are your mesenteries, okay? So that's how you take a look at if you're looking at the front or the back. Okay, here is the structure, abdominal organs, sigmoid colon. Okay, so one part of the sigmoid colon is located here. Okay, and then here, this picture, are you looking at the front or are you looking at the back? Okay, so my example here is going to be the appendix right here. Okay, so I'm looking at the back. So these are the mesenteries, where you have the blood vessels that are actually attached to the mesenteries at the back of the jejunum, okay, right? And also, I'm seeing my bile duct, so I'm looking at my gallbladder, which also the back of the liver, okay? So that's how I notice that what part am I looking at? This should be the right side, or what we call the ascending colon. This would be the descending colon, connecting to the sigmoid. Okay. So here I'm looking at the jejunum in front. So those are the spirals, the spiral of the small intestinal tract called the jejunum. Okay, and then here I'm looking at the back again. Okay. Wait a minute. Okay, I want to be sure because I'm looking at my appendix. It's on the right side, not my side, not my right, but his right. And what I'm looking is the mesentery and the jejunum are supposed to be here, okay? So I'm looking at the front, okay? I'm looking at the front without the jejunum. And the reason for that is going to be I'm seeing the cecum on the right side, okay? And the appendix here. This is going to be the ascending colon. This is descending colon to rectum, okay? So the jejunum was not actually, what's not seen on this picture here. So I'm looking at the front. Now I'm looking at the back. Why? My appendix is on the right side, so it means I'm looking at the back. So all of this are the mesenteries of the small intestine. Okay. All right. So here is the liver. I'm looking at the back. Gallbladder is only visible inside the liver. So when you see the gallbladder, you're looking at the posterior portion of the liver. Okay. So the posterior portion of the liver, you should be able to know where's the left and right. Remember, the right side of the liver is going to be larger than the left side. So I'm actually looking at the right lobe here, left lobe here, quadrate lobe here, and your caudate lobe here. And I see the gallbladder, and we'll talk about those ducts later on, okay? So orient yourself first. Are you looking at the front or the back? So gallbladder is visible, so I'm looking at the back of the liver. Now again, I'm looking at the back of the liver, okay? And then This is going to be the falciform ligament, left lobe, right lobe, quadrate lobe, and your caudate lobe, okay? Now we're gonna take a look at the tubes. So this is the gallbladder. It's connected to its duct, and that duct is called the cystic duct, okay? But remember, the, the bile is created by the liver. So the bile secretes it to this and this hepatic duct. Remember, this is left. So that should be my left hepatic duct. This is going to be my structure, left hepatic duct. This is the right lobe. So this should be my right hepatic duct. Okay. So they become one here to become your common hepatic duct. Then after that, remember they actually go and store itself at the gallbladder through what we call the cystic duct. Their cystic duct. And then from there, gallbladder squeezes to the cystic duct, and the cystic duct connects to the bile duct. And that's the one that goes to the duodenum. Okay, and then here, another picture. Okay, remember, I'm looking at the back, because gallbladder is visible. So this is my right, and this is my left, because the right is bigger. So if I see my right and my left, so I can actually know this is going to be my right hepatic duct. And this is going to be my left hepatic duct. And this is going to be my common hepatic duct. And then this is going to be my cystic duct to the gallbladder. Okay? And this is going to be my bile duct, or what we call the common bile duct. All right? Okay, so the flow from the liver to the gallbladder, and then from the gallbladder, it squeezes out into the duodenum. It's going to be a flow. Okay? All right? Again, looking at this, I'm seeing the liver, so I'm looking at this side as my right, and this is my left. So this is going to be the left hepatic duct, and then this is going to be my right hepatic duct, and this is going to be my common hepatic duct, cystic duct, gallbladder, and here is going to be my common bile duct, or what we call bile duct. Okay, and then again, this is, and from the back, this is the right, this is the left. Okay, this is the quadrate, caudate lobe. All right, so this is what it looks like inside the liver. Okay, we call it lobules. In the middle, it's called central vein. Okay, then we have the arteries, hepatic artery, hepatic vein, and the bile duct. It's called the hepatic triad. Okay, and then there's going to be sinusoids inside here. These are vessels that are sinusoids. Remember, sinusoids are bigger pores, and there's macrophages inside them. So everything is going to be going to the hepatocytes. These are your hepatocytes, and then they're the one that metabolize whatever goes inside your sinusoids coming out from the hepatic portal. Okay, so now I'm not too, I'm not into what we call looking at histology of the liver. Okay. All right. So so we finished with digestive, and then we're going to continue on with your kidney. So I'm going to give you a break. It's 6:25, so we should actually come back here about 7:25. And that will be our break for today. And then we're going to go to the kidney and kidney models. Okay. 25. Okay. So we have
Professor?
Yes.
Are you going to be uploading the study guide, or are you going to be uploading the pre-test for the final exam?
All the pre-test, your final exams are all the pre-tests from test 1 to test 5.
Okay, so that's for the final exam, but for exam 5?
Isn't it in there? It should be in there. It's on.
The study guide's not there.
Okay, so I know it's not a pre-test anymore. It's actually a
study guide.
Yeah. So if you let me actually take a look at my.
So the final exam will be lab and lecture?
No, it's only theoretical questions.
Oh, okay.
It's only one exam.
Okay.
Okay, let me see. Okay,
So there's a total of 3 exams, like lab and lecture for exam 5 and the final exam?
Yeah, we're gonna have to space it out so that it's not gonna be a consecutive. So I'm gonna put it as like 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And then after that, we're gonna have the finals at about 9 o'clock.
So exam 5 is gonna be a combination of lecture and lab?
Yeah, exam 5 is all the same way as what we do with exam 4.
So 3 exams.
So it's 2 exams for exam 5. The lecture exam, theoretical, and the lab exam, which is going to be identification. Then after that, we go to the final exam, and that's going to be just theoretical questions. Okay.
And for the also you said study guide for exam 5, and for the study, the final exam, that's all the pre-tests that we've done from 1 through 5.
Yeah, and just concentrate on the lecture exams, okay? Because we're not doing models for the final exam. So you just actually concentrate on the theoretical questions like multiple choice, matching, stuff like that. Okay. All right. So I noticed it's not there, so I'm gonna put it right now. Okay. So it's digestive and reproductive and your urinary, and it's not gonna be a pre-test anymore because you don't have to. Okay, you don't have to answer it as a pre-test. So you're just gonna actually be using it to study. It has question and answers already. Okay. Okay, so I'll put it in there. So I want to actually close down this meeting so we can actually have the video. Okay. So again, we'll see each other at 7:30. It's ready 6:30. So we'll see each other again at 7:30 for the urinary and then your lab for the urinary. Okay. All right. So I'll see you guys.